Good afternoon. Again, we're here finishing up the Tavernier Fire Rescue Series in Key Largo at the Key Largo Fire Rescue Department. We are joined by Rob Bleser. Rob Bleser was a fire chief in Tavernier, also the ambulance chief in Tavernier. We're going to get to talk to him a little bit about that. Rob, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Oh, hello, Michael. How you doing?
Very good. Rob, give us an idea of how it kind of all began for you when you came into the Keys and wanted to join the fire service.
I was in the Keys from having been born and raised in Miami area. After I graduated from college is when I came into the Keys permanently, and that was in 1977 to start quiescence diving charters. And in 1980, there's a gentleman that I met by the name of Les Berry, and he and I had become friends, and I was asking him, what's the deal with that pager you have on? And he said, well, that's the fire department. I said, no kidding. He said, yeah, you need to come by. We need all the help we can get. And so I went for their Wednesday night meeting. It was October 1980.
Right.
I went for the Wednesday night meeting, and with what I saw there, I said, if my house is burning down, I want to be a part of it, because we were a little thin at the time.
Right, yeah.
So,
how many people? Just out of curiosity.
There was
at the time.
At that time, by that point, there had been some good guys in there prior to me, but prior to that era. But by that time, they had whittled down to 9 to 11.
Right.
I think it was about 9 to 11 guys that you could count on. All
and the year again?
I'm sorry?
The year?
1980, October of 1980.
Okay.
And I wasn't an EMT yet, but I was. What got me into being an EMT was working in Key Largo, with the business being in Key Largo. The call went out, and Doris Kemp was all by herself with a head-on the stretch.
Wow.
And so I boogied on up there, and I was the first person there. We had a couple of fatalities, but she was working some people and trying to
POV
by herself. I was in POV.
POV. Okay. Personally owned vehicle for those.
So, eventually we got help, but there was quite some time. Yeah. So when it came time to hear about an EMT course, I went ahead and jumped in there and took that. Well, the EMT course led to ending up a few years later being the ambulance chief of Tavernier. I was that for a year, and then I don't even remember really running for fire chief.
Right.
But I ended up becoming the fire chief. And there was constant classes and all the things that we had going with the
Fire 1, Fire 2.
Yeah, all that was a little bit later on, but
Sure.
The original was the basic volunteer, and all of the things that you could get certified in if you went to the Chiefs Association conferences, et cetera, et cetera. So we did that quite a bit through the time. We went through all kinds of trials and tribulations down here relative to primarily accidents, but of course plenty of fires, enough to keep us busy. And it was an active time in my life, but it became stressful because there was the fact that we had all of these divisions that were made out by taxing districts. So you had, for instance, Key Largo here is taxing District 6. Well, it went 1 through 6, and Tavernier was taxing District 5. And the county administration, the emergency medical director, was running the show for all of the
districts.
All of the districts, as far as we would provide our budgets. Our budgets would be cared for, but then when it came time to say, hey, where are my gloves? Our gloves, we ordered 24 pairs of gloves, and they're not here. Oh, well, Stock Island needed those gloves. So
right.
we went ahead and gave them to them, and that's not the way it works. This is taxing District 5, taxing district numbers. That's how ultimately taxing District 6 became a special taxing district, because of what all of us were going through as fire officers back in
Five
the
and
day.
beyond, down to one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
five and beyond became just part of Monroe County. City of Marathon came into play. Key Largo as a taxing district, although if you recall, there was an attempt to make the city of Key Largo.
Right.
And it had to do with the Mars and a couple other folks. And I was kind of on board with it, but the best we got out of it was a special.
Speaking of Scott Mars.
Yeah.
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 Mars family, right?
The Mar family. The best that we could get out of it was taxing District 6. And of course, Sergio was a big part of that as well. So it became apparent as I moved from Tavernier, I lived down there for 12 years in that district, but it became evident that as I spent more time up in Key Largo, that even though I was on both departments, I ended up on Key Largo's department as well to assist with the fire, all the fire aspects, but also water emergency stuff.
Right.
And help Ike Peel out with that. And eventually I just dropped the Tavernier thing because it made more sense just to stay in Key Largo.
Key Largo.
So the total was 36 years in the fire service.
Wow. Wow.
Then
And your rank here in Key Largo, top rank was
captain,
Gotcha.
fire captain, and then later on, as you get older and as things happen, became the captain of the water emergency team, taking it over from Ike Beal.
Correct. So
We were in
talk about some accidents. I know you've been on many high velocity accidents here in the Keys, Key Largo, and in Tavernier. Talk about what it was like and how we've progressed to where we are today.
To what we can deal with today.
Exactly.
It was it was chancey best going back to those earlier years.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that there was no wall on the stretch. It was just 2 lanes and very little shoulder. So that was a dynamic arena. And then we had the curve in Tavernier before that became 4-laned.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of accidents there, a lot of head-ons around that curve. Plantation Key Marina area, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so the head-on collisions were the things that we had a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're working like we all did as volunteers and you have people dying in your hands,
Right.
that's tough stuff.
That is tough stuff.
Tough stuff. You knew that even though you were working to get them out, trying to
And you got
secure them.
younger guys on staff too to have to deal with some of that stuff, the critical stress debriefings
right,
and stuff
and there
like that.
there was a lot of that went on.
Right.
There were so many
But we provided that.
accidents that were nothing short of spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the dynamics and the logistics of it, really something. And so many of them that you looked at, you looked at the nature of the scene and what had occurred and how a matter of inches either saved somebody's life or took somebody's life.
Right.
You know, just a matter of inches,
Mm-hmm.
less than a foot, many times. So.
And I remember back in the day when we would actually just try to figure out what the heck happened.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah, and it helped us all in our individual lives become better drivers,
Mm-hmm.
get off of motorcycles,
Yep.
you know, do things like that. But a lot of that. Of course, we had a lot of medical calls too.
Mm-hmm.
When I didn't do medical here in Key Largo, it was all in Tavernier, but we had quite a few medical calls as well. But overall, the nature of the volunteer system back then was very impressive because we were all there for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
We all had multiple backgrounds. You know, go on a scene, Avenir, and you got Conklin saying, "Hey, go catch the electric," you know, and Burley, go catch the water because we've got everything flowing. You know,
Right.
shut the water off to the residents, shut the electric off, et cetera, et cetera. Or, hey, we've got a draft. This thing is riding back. We got to get some water. I know right where I can reach it in this guy's backyard or at the end of this canal or at the
Yes.
boat ramp. Those
Yes.
are all the things that were where the value was versus today that everybody is very interested in doing the right thing, but it's not unusual to see a fire truck running up the road when the incident is south because they don't have the local knowledge.
Right.
So the local knowledge, the capabilities, the training that was constant, if you recall.
Oh yes,
The
absolutely.
constant training, and the fact that everybody just really cared about their community.
Mm-hmm. And we wanted to be the best. We wanted Key Largo, Tavernier, Alamorada. We wanted to be the best. We went to all those trainings. We did all those things.
Right. All three
and we
departments.
also worked together on all
And we
of the
worked
trainings.
together. But it was also a rivalry on a regular basis, which was great.
Talk about that.
Like FSU, University of Florida,
Right.
Or whatever, always being, it's the old adage, how to get an FS. I went to University of Florida, graduated from there. How do you get an FSU graduate off the front porch? You pay for the pizza. So there's always that rivalry.
That's great.
But at the same time, remember the fire challenges that we had and how great those were?
Oh yeah.
And how this department, Key Largo's department, we had a water emergency team as well. It was a dive rescue team.
Right.
Because we didn't have boats, but we had that in Tavernier.
Right.
But it really built that thing up in this location in Key Largo. It
Yes.
became the number one Upper Keys asset, the number one Monroe County water asset.
Mm-hmm.
And we got called all the way down to the Content Keys, down to Key West. We went lots of places.
Did a lot of body recovery.
Yeah.
Body recovery.
We did multiple recoveries, always with that interest and that hope of a live recovery.
Of course.
But most of them there were two that I recall that we never found. But it really was interesting how many we did find, and there were two that we found alive.
Right, which is awesome.
Yeah, so
And that's really what our goal was.
yeah, so, and I think that was out of a total of 14 or 15 over those years. Not to mention the boating accidents, response to boating accidents, response to because we had the two boats, the Mako and the McKee craft, and the Mako could handle the fire pump, and the McKee craft could as well, but not quite as well. The attacking fires at residences that were on canals,
Correct. Yep.
working that.
Yep.
So there was a lot of
Of
stuff
different
that-
angles that we approached.
covered.
Yeah, that we covered.
approached. And the thing became, the volunteer system became so much more difficult because people became so much busier, and the continuation of training and the upgrading and the maintenance of the personnel and the work ethic started to slide a little bit with what was coming up through the ranks. And it became evident while I was still an officer that we were running out of room for the volunteers. They just weren't showing up.
Right.
They weren't there. They couldn't put in, or didn't want to put in, the personal time that it took to be with to supply their efforts to the community.
Right.
So I applaud all the volunteers from back in those days.
Yep.
I applaud all of them.
Today, the volunteers pretty much have gone by the wayside.
Yeah, they've
It's
gone by
it's
the
a
wayside.
thing of the past.
And
But what a history! For some people, what a future! You know, they had
right,
they got
so many of them.
yes,
So many of the people that I was their chief. Today, I work with these guys, but some of them retiring now. But I work with these guys in part of my compressor business.
right,
I service all of Miami-Dade, Pembroke Pines, Broward Sheriff's Office Fire Department, et cetera, Miami Beach. A lot of those guys, some of those guys were transfers from the volunteer system down in the Florida Keys.
right. Makes you proud. It really does.
Yeah.
You know, it's very.
Some of the guys that are Vinny Beyond, Vinny Zavoli, Tom Strobel, Denny Bodden,
Deborah Swenson.
Deborah Swenson. See her.
Jason
Jason Swenson.
Yeah.
All of those people without, just at the start, just firing off without thinking.
Joe Florio.
Joe Florio, right? Yeah, you can think of a bunch of them,
Yeah.
and a lot more than that. Actually.
Oh yeah, bunches.
That were their roots were built, their talents were built here.
Yeah.
So
So
it's good stuff.
good stuff, really good stuff. Well, Rob, is there anything you'd like to add? Is there anything that you'd like to, any big stories that you remember back in the day that just kind of blew you away that would, you'd like to talk about? I know we just spoke with Benny Gonzalez, and he was speaking about the Melons fire. And I remember back in Tavernier, there's a couple of big trap fires in Alamorada.
Oh yeah, we had some big. We had just gotten our
help them.
our 95-foot aerial platform.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cheap then, and we put that. That was using the aerial a lot throughout the night.
Yeah.
The Chica Lodge fire.
Sure.
That was
Yep.
New Year's Eve. Started with the fireworks
Totally forgot
over the
about that.
bar,
Yeah.
and we fought that until 2 o'clock the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And we had false ceilings and false
Attic spaces.
attic spaces, and it was really, really tough. They ended up having to tear that building down, but we saved the building fine. It was just, I think it was more about construction. They weren't going to let anybody say they're good, because they built that place over the years, add on false ceiling here,
Yes.
false ceiling there, and we had trouble, trenching the roof. We trench the roof and get cold air out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what the heck? The fire's coming this way, and we're getting cold air out of here. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. It was dynamic. I remember going back there with Tom Strobel. I said, "You got to come back here and look." And we were watching the soffits way up the way puff. The fire was way down here. I said, "Man, we've got a big problem. We can't figure this one out."
Another.
I wasn't at the Melons fire. That
Yeah,
I was out of town.
talk to Benny about it. Sounds like another backdraft kind of situation arising in that Chica fire. That breathing, that puffing.
Oh, the breathing and the inability to the standard operating procedures for stopping a fire, creating a fire break by trenching or by any other method, was sort of out the window, because we cut in there and it wasn't what was underneath.
Right.
You go down the hallway and look up, and go, we're underneath that spot, and pop those tiles out, and it wasn't there.
Right.
And so it had gotten it got to where the beams for the original roof had been coated with some type of insulation, and actually they had to repair the beams. They used, it looked like some glass or something, I'm not sure of that.
Yeah.
But something allowed it so that the beams were burning inside of their own containment.
Right.
And no matter how much water you put on it, it wasn't getting on it.
Right.
So, yeah, that was a dynamic fire. Tanker rollovers,
Yeah.
spectacular tanker rollovers. Down at the
Unbelievable heat. I
yeah,
remember.
and then the propane leak up there at the 105 at Key Largo, and oddly enough, William Wagner, the chief of Alamorada at the time, I think he was still the fire marshal. I don't know if he was or deputy fire marshal. I don't think he was with Alamorada at the point.
Right.
He might have been though.
Yeah.
But he was stuck on the 18-mile stretch side of that, and I was the lead on the south side.
Right.
And this cloud of propane is coming across the highway, and there's one house. I don't know if ever when you're driving up there and there's this one little residence right there, and I'm thinking, propane water heater, something, and there were cars in the driveway.
Maybe a gas stove
I said, yeah.
with a pilot.
Well, pilot light, or a gas water heater, and
That's all it takes.
I said, you, get to that house right now and get that evacuated. They started walking towards the house, and they had about 150 feet, 200 feet to go. I said, run!
Right.
Unfortunately, we got that controlled and got that dropped down, but that closed the highway for quite some time.
Yeah. I think we evacuated, if I remember correctly, I was on that, and believe we evacuated 1 mile in diameter.
Because of the wind direction.
Correct.
Even though, and that was all on the bay side, we had to evacuate.
Right.
But the cloud, part of the cloud was going that way, part of the cloud was going across the highway to that house.
Right.
Yeah, so we did do a full-blown evacuation of that area. So that was a little more than the average.
For the volunteer system,
Yeah.
not a paid system, for the volunteer system, I think.
But you know
did
what?
really,
And that's
really
it.
well.
And they said, for the most part, the fire department personnel worked hand in hand with the police departments.
Yeah.
With Monroe County Sheriff's Office and with Highway Patrol. Yeah.
Day and night.
Day and night.
Day and night. I mean, multiple accidents, nighttime hours, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We had any tow service we need. We had instantly FHP.
They understood that,
They got it.
we were working on life safety and saving property, and
Right.
they listened to us. We said we need that road closed. They'd do it. There was one that was on US 1 that was a tractor trailer fire. And it was a Winn-Dixie, I believe, truck, and it had a bunch of food things in it, but the trailer was on fire. It was a terrible accident, head-on collision, and I called, and at the time I was Tavernier, deputy chief, I think at the time. Anyway, because from 1985 to 1990, I was chief, but then after I was no longer chief, I was asked to stay on as deputy chief for a couple of years.
Right.
So I was up there, and I called dispatch. I said, "We need to get law enforcement and close US 1 at Card Sound Split, both ends. The road is closed."
Yeah.
She goes, "Under what authority?" I said, "Under God's authority and under the fact that tractor trailer is covering both lanes. Nothing going, and it's on fire."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it was
But
the.
that
a
was
lot
one
of
of the
people don't understand that some of those tractor trailers they contain a huge fuel load
Oh, sure.
for any kind of open fire.
Well, it was a
flame.
head-on collision too.
Right.
And the trailer was on fire. And it's the one time I got hurt, although I didn't go to the hospital or anything. But there was water shooting on one side of the trailer, and the trailer had melted enough, and my side of the trailer broke loose with the fire, and a can of institution size string beans got hit by that water hose, and it flew out and clobbered me in the shoulder and knocked me down. That was just one of the few times I actually got nailed. But the reason for the accident was real interesting. I apologize.
No problem. No problem.
Was that the real reason for the accident? The reason for the accident was a head-on collision, and it took. We couldn't really tell until we got most of the fire out and found that the car was under the front end. The tractor trailer was laying
Yes.
sideways, jackknifed, but the car was under the front end. And there was a body in the vehicle. You can make out the body barely. And after a little bit of work, there was another body in the vehicle underneath.
Wow.
And it was carjacking. The car, people from the two workers from Ocean Reef, they were going back up to Homestead, up Card Sound, and she was a waitress or whatever, and just didn't really know the guy. Was just co-workers with the guy that owned the car.
Sure.
And he was getting gas at the Shell gas station up there in Homestead, right in Florida City. And the guy came up and carjacked the vehicle, and she was asleep in the back seat.
Oh my God.
And he took off down the stretch, and it took her out, which was a shame.
Yeah.
With that, and then were you around for the one where the gravel tractor trailer
Dumped.
front end collision, head on collision, rolled off into the ditch,
Yes.
and all the, excuse me.
Yes.
And we sent David Allen in, water emergency team. We sent him in, and he dove as best he could around he was in the mangrove muck,
The truck.
but around the truck,
Yep.
to sure nobody else was in the truck. And as it started to get light, Rob Burley was up there as well. I was there, and he said, "Man, you got to come see something."
I know what you're going to say.
And we walked over, and
We
we
found a Trans Am.
pushed the mangroves apart. He shined the light because it was still. He said, "There's a reflector down there. There's a red reflector."
Yeah.
And we said, "Holy Moses! There's another vehicle involved."
Yeah.
And we had to get in, and the tow truck lifted up. Got the truck off by midday,
Mm-hmm.
and that couple that in a convertible,
Yes.
and they were both gone. But wow,
Unbelievable.
yeah, we had some dynamic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Unbelievable stuff.
and the reason we went off is because they caught it. They caught that truck on the left front and took out his steering and took out the left front tire. So when he caught them, he just
Pushed them all the way through.
all the way across the lanes and into. No, wait, there was another car. That wasn't the car. Remember, there was another car down the road.
Right.
It was the car down the road that took out the front. The tractor trailer came across and took out the.
Pushed the car
Took
off the road and into the muck.
Yeah, and on top of it.
Actually, yeah.
Landed on top of it.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember. Yep.
So many.
But those are just a couple
stories.
of examples. We always had very unusual EMS calls, and one quick one was a little bit of irony to it. Is call. We never knew what you were going to get with it was like pockets of chocolates when it came to the call, right?
Right.
Dispatch, and they said respond to such and such on the bay side. This is in Tavernier. Reference man fell down, and we got there. And there's a guy laying in a lounge chair, and I walked up to him and could see that his abdomen was just swelling up quickly, internal bleeding. And I said, "Well, how'd you fall down? Would you?" He said, No, it was a plane crash. I said, "Well, that's fallen down quite a bit."
Yeah.
They'd been picked up by boat because it was a single engine aircraft that crashed in the water. But man fell down is how the call went down. Yeah, so you never know what you're going to get.
Good stuff.
You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And then in to the drafting today, you couldn't get. Nobody would know how to draft, I don't think.
Yeah.
But
It's a.
that was unlimited water source.
Mm-hmm.
We knew where the water capability was. We knew what to do. We
knew what
practiced
streets,
drafting once a
right.
month.
Right.
We knew the streets, and we had unlimited water.
Yeah.
And that was a biggie.
Today, totally different animal.
Yeah.
Totally different
Get
animal.
the tanker there.
Personnel,
Culver.
you name it, all the way down the gamut. I mean, totally different personnel. Not really too sure of. I've seen trucks go by and turn around and come back and go back the other way and looking for stuff. Just
Well,
not familiar with the
They're just
territory.
not familiar enough with the area. And again, when it gets dispatched, you never know what you're going to get. So that's just part of the game.
Part of the game. Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about a little place that's kind of near and dear to a lot of our hearts because it's been in the community for so long? Quiescence Dive Services. Tell us a little bit about
Thanks for
your
saying
place.
that. But I started Quiescence in 1977 when I graduated from the University of Florida. I quit college for a year, 74 into 75 that year, and worked down here as a dive master. So when I graduated from college, I just wanted to take it easy and have fun and make a little bit of money. And Ike Beal was who I had gotten to know when I was a dive master, was working over at Key Largo Campground. He said, "We need another boat over here." So my dad gave me $1,000 for graduation. I put it down on a new boat. I bought at Duck Key Marina, built the dive platform, came in and showed up with a full cup of coffee every morning.
Nice. Tell us about the name.
Quiescence.
Yep.
Quiescence was, well, again, it was just going to be for a little while. And Ike's wife, Karen, we were all friends. And as I was building on the boat, I said, she said, "What are you going to name it?" And I said, I'm in mental neutral right now after being in school all my life, but I don't think I can call it mental neutral. And she thought about it for a little while. A day or two later, she called me and said, "How about the word quiescence?" I said, "Well, what does it mean?" She says it means tranquil, serene, inactive. So I liked the colors that I designed, and I liked, and the logo implies water, the green, blue, and green.
Right.
And that's what became Quiescence Diving Charters, and then 1 year later, Quiescence Diving Services Inc. And then after 4 years, we moved over to where we are today. So that was 1977, so that's been 48 years now.
Wow. Fantastic. Unbelievable. Yeah, if you're
So
ever down in the...
you'll have to come down for the 50th.
Yes. If you're ever down in the Florida Keys and want to go out on those boats there at Quiescence, please...
Private charters.
103 mile marker?
103 and a half.
Just before the cut.
Just before the cut.
Yep.
Which was where we kept the in-water fireboat.
Right.
For many, many, many years.
The Mako. Right.
So,
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, Rob, it has been a pleasure and an honor to you were a lot of people don't know, but Rob was my fire chief in Tavernier, and he saw me grow through the whole service, and I appreciate you doing this for us. Thank you so much,
Michael.
Rob.
Thank you for your service all those years. We all grew together.
We grew together,
and we built bonds. So many of us built bonds that'll never be broken.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So
absolutely. Appreciate it so much. So next, folks, we're going to be going to Islamorada. We're going to be finished up here with Tavernier, and we're going to move on down to Islamorada, and I'm going to be taking a road trip to Rome, Georgia, to speak to the fire chief, the past fire chief of Islamorada, Mr. William Wagner. We'd like to thank you again here at Smoke Stomper Media. I'm Mike Edgerton. We will see you next time. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks,
Take care.
Mike.
Yes, sir.
Hey, bud.